At my daughter's wedding, I reached for the chair they had set for me. The music was still playing, violins weaving soft notes through the air, when the groom, my daughter's fiancé, yanked it away. My body crashed against the marble floor. The sound echoed, sharp enough to still the bows of the quartet, sharp enough to freeze the laughter that rose, then broke loose like glass. People laughed. Not strangers on a street corner. Family, guests in pressed suits and satin dresses. People who had clapped for me as I walked her down the aisle. People who should have known better. And above their laughter came his voice. Jasper, my daughter's choice. Your place, he said, smirking down at me, is on the floor. It's strange, the things you notice when you've been humiliated. The air smelled of roses from the bouquets, but underneath was the faint tang of champagne. My shoulder ached from the fall, but what burned hotter was the memory of every night I had worked double shifts so that my daughter could have this day, a day that now tasted of ash. Vivian's bouquet tilted, petals slipping like tears across the aisle. Her eyes were wide, trembling, torn between shame and loyalty. She had dreamed of this moment all her life. She had not dreamed of watching her father sprawled on the marble turned into a punchline. I didn't shout. I didn't curse. I rose slowly, carefully, the way a man does who has learned to stand after life has tried to keep him down more times than he can count. I set the chair upright myself. Its scrape across the floor was louder than the laughter. Then I sat, my eyes not on Jasper but on Vivian. She needed to see that her father was not broken. Not yet, and that was when I heard it. Boots. Not polished shoes, not clicking heels, boots. Steady, purposeful, cutting across the marble. The room turned toward the sound. At the door stood a man, older, hair gray at the temples, his suit immaculate but his posture military. His eyes swept the room, then locked on mine. He stopped cold, his face drained of color. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Sir, is that you?" The laughter died. The music faltered, and the ground beneath Jasper's smug smile began to shift. But before that moment, there were other signs. Signs I tried to ignore. I met Jasper at dinner, months before the wedding. He extended his hand, cold and limp, the handshake of a man rehearsing respect. We sat at a table polished enough to reflect chandeliers. He looked at me as though I were an exhibit in a museum. The mechanic father, the man of grease and calloused hands. My daughter beamed with pride, telling him how I rebuilt an old motorcycle from scratch. He glanced at his watch, lips curled in polite amusement. "Dangerous hobby," he said. "Different generations, different risks." He spoke of neighborhoods like mine as though they were mistakes people grew out of. When the bill arrived, he slid it across the table toward me, eyes gleaming. "Tradition," he said softly. "The bride's father pays. $347, a week of groceries." I paid. I tipped. And I left with my pride tucked carefully behind my ribs, where his words couldn't reach. I thought that was the end of it. But men like Jasper don't stop when they think they've won. They keep testing. The night he came pounding on my door, I knew he was unraveling. His polished mask had slipped into desperation. His voice was sharp, his threats clumsy. "Call her tomorrow. Tell her you were wrong about me. Apologize, or you'll lose her forever." I leaned against the doorframe, calm as stone. "And if I don't?" His face flushed, eyes wild. "Then I'll make sure she believes you're just a bitter old man, jealous, trying to ruin her future." He stormed out, but the house stayed heavy with his voice. I stood in the silence, staring at Maria's photograph on the mantel. Her smile was steady, even in stillness. I touched the chain around my neck where her ring rested. "I promised," I whispered. "I won't let her fall." Whispers began to reach me. At the bakery, at the hardware store, in the murmurs of neighbors. Jasper bragging downtown that he would move Vivian out of Brooklyn, leave behind the place she was raised. At a cafe, someone overheard him sneer that people who stay in working-class neighborhoods are failures. And then one day, idling at a Manhattan stoplight, I saw him outside a glass tower, phone pressed to his ear. His voice carried above the traffic. She's perfect, sweet, trusting, and her father? Simple. Exactly the kind of man who won't interfere. She's an acquisition, a step, that's all. Acquisition. Not a wife, not a partner, an acquisition. My hands gripped the wheel until my knuckles whitened. I drove home, into the garage, into the only place that still felt like mine. The Harley stood unfinished under the light. I touched the handlebars, grease still under my nails, and I whispered again to Maria. He thinks she's a step. He thinks I'm nothing. But I'll show him. I'll keep my promise. The wedding came. Eternal gardens, all marble and chandeliers, all roses and crystal. My daughter radiant in the lace that once belonged to her mother. I walked her down the aisle, gave her away with a smile I fought to hold. The vows blurred. The applause rang hollow, and then came the reception. The place cards, mine set far from the head table. The laughter of men in tailored suits. The false smiles of women in jewels. And then the chair, ripped from under me, my body cracking against marble, my humiliation spilling across the floor like broken glass. He thought I would stay down. He thought I belonged on the floor. And then the boots. Saul Hale, 20 years vanished in an instant. I saw him not in his suit but in desert sand, bleeding, pinned down by gunfire. I saw myself hauling him on my back, bullets cracking past my ears, his voice ragged in the night, swearing he would never forget. And here he was, eyes wet, voice trembling. "Sir, is that you?" The guests turned, whispers spread. Jasper's smirk collapsed. Saul stepped forward, voice rising with each word. "Ladies and gentlemen, this man, Sergeant Gus Reyes, carried me through fire in Iraq. He saved my life. Without him, I would not be here. Without him, there would be no family." Gasps rippled. The laughter that had once cut me now cut him. Saul turned on his son, eyes blazing. "You humiliated the man who gave me my life. You mocked him. You treated him as less than nothing." Jasper stammered. His lips moved, but no words came. I rose slowly, my voice steady enough to cut marble. "Respect is not bought with money. Respect is earned." Vivian's eyes filled with tears. Her hands shook as she pulled the ring from her finger. She placed it on the table with the sound of glass breaking. "Love doesn't look like this," she said. "I choose truth. I choose dignity. I choose the life my parents taught me to honor." She walked to me, her hand slipping into mine, and together we stood, not as bride and groom, but as father and daughter, stronger than we had ever been. The hall erupted, not with laughter but with applause. Applause that shook chandeliers. Applause that washed Jasper pale and broken. We walked out step by step into the cool night air. The city lights burned above us, neon against the dark. I touched the chain around my neck, Maria's ring warm against my chest. "I kept my promise," I whispered. "Because sometimes justice begins with a chair.